thing organized here. Okay, so we've been learning the book of Malachim now, and we just started actually, and we've done maybe 2 or so psukim, and we're learning about David HaMelech having this punishment in his old age, and he's near his passing. We know he only lived 70 years, and those 70 years were given to him from Adam HaRishon. Adam was supposed to live 1,000 years, and he gave 70 years to David HaMelech so that David HaMelech would live. Of course, it's a little above our understanding what that means to give away years of your life to someone else, and what that means that David would not have lived without Adam giving him his years. But however, whatever it means, at least on a surface level, David lived 70 years, and Adam HaRishon ended up only living 930 years. And David is at the end of his life, and what happened here is that David is getting punished for cutting the corner of the garment of, at least that's the understanding, is that because he cut the corner of the garment of Shaul, he was punished. And we discussed that a little last time, what that means. What he did was obviously not an outright sin. What was wrong with cutting the corner of the garment of Shaul, who wanted to kill him? He even would have been exonerated if he even killed Shaul. So all he did was cut off his corner of his garment. I mean, Shaul wanted to kill him. You're allowed to kill in self-defense. And but the way we understood it is that, on David's level, and David understood that Shaul is anointed from Hashem. He's a tzaddik, even though he has this mistake that he wants to kill David. And so on a certain level, at least on David's level, David was not only not allowed to kill Shaul, he wasn't even allowed to cut his garment. We also mentioned that cutting his garment meant Shaul was not walking around with tzitzis now, because his tzitzis were now ruined. In those days, the 4-cornered garment was basically if you cut off the corner of the garment, it meant you cut off the tzitzis. And so he did cause him not to have tzitzis. We don't know how long, but at least that for those moments, until he got himself a new garment that had 4 corners that they were able to that they tied on tzitzis. And so David HaMelech was punished now, and he's feeling cold. And in verse 2, it mentions here that the servants told him that we should let there be sought for my lord the king a young virgin who will stand before the king and be his attendant. She will lie in your bosom, and it will be warm for my lord the king. So what's going on here is that the doctors advised that there should be some way of getting David warm, even though the garments were not warming him. Again, that was a punishment, measure for measure, that he wasn't being warmed from the garments. But nevertheless, maybe other things would warm him. Now, this is some obviously scientific thing that I'm not sure why this should be, but somehow it says that a virgin actually has more warmth than a non-virgin. And so the doctors advised that there should be if a virgin girl would lie with David, again, they're not having relations, but they are lying together, and that is going to warm him. And it's specifically a virgin versus a non-virgin. And somehow the virginity causes the heat, the body heat, to stay inside and be, cause her body to be warmer. Like a virgin's body is warmer than a non-virgin.
Rabbi,
yes.
Regarding the corner of the garment, if we're not including the fact that it might be that it's making the garment not available for tzitzis, irrespective of that, is the problem that it's baltashis, that it's destroying his garment?
Possibly, if it depends. I mean, the thing is that he had a good reason for doing it. So if you want to talk straight halacha, straight Jewish law, I don't think you could claim that that's called baltashlis. He's saving his life. he's trying to convince Bal Tashchis, according to the letter of the law, means that you're causing damage that that is not that is simply for damaging purposes. But if you're damaging something that's benefiting you, then it's not called damaging. So, for example, if you have a tree that's ruining the foundation of your house because the roots are growing into the foundation of your house, and the house is going to fall. So ruining the tree would not really be Bal Tashchis, according to the letter of the law. You're saving your house, which is worth $500,000, and cutting down a tree, which is valued at, $50, $100, So yeah, are you ruining a tree? You're ruining a tree. So according to the letter of the law, and again, I'm taking it very literally that this is the law of Bal Tashchis applies to a fruit tree. But according to the letter of the law, that applies if the fruit tree is not producing a value more than cutting it down. Here, cutting it down is benefiting you. The same thing in the story over here, which David was cutting off a corner of the garment in order to benefit himself, that he shouldn't have to run away and live his life like a homeless person, and cause suffering to so many hundreds of other people that were running with him. And so this definitely would not fall into the regular category of Bal Tashchis. Now, if you want to take it a deeper step, that it's talking about according beyond the letter of the law, that there might be on his level it was considered Bal Tashchis. That's that maybe you could explain. You know what I mean? Because again, we're talking beyond the letter of the law. According to the letter of the law, it would not be Bal Tashchis, but because he was on such a high level. And for him, he shouldn't have taken this matter into his own hands, and he should have, trusted in Hashem and not tried to change things. So, then you could say something along those lines.
Yes.
Now, going back to what we were saying, I must say this is a very surprising thing that the doctors advised that he should lie with a woman, and that will bring him warmth. And this was not a simple matter, as I started explaining last week, that is he marrying this woman who he's going to be lying with, or is he not marrying the woman who he's going to be lying with? Now, is that allowed according to Jewish law to lie with a woman? Even again, we said last week that he's not going to have relations with her. Okay, he doesn't have relations with her, but is he allowed to be alone in a secluded area? He's going to be secluded in his bedroom with this woman who he's not married to. Is that allowed? Yes, Ben.
Wanted to say, as far as Shaul's cloth or garment that he cut, maybe it's because he was yelling it out loud and everybody could see the cloth and then, his garment, and see that it was cut. So it's like embarrassing him in front of everybody.
Mm-hmm. I have to see, there might be other midrashim about this, but I should clarify the actual source that we know is the Gemara. And going back to what David was asking, and Ben is trying to give a thought as well, I should really make it clear that the Gemara's term is anyone that embarrasses clothing will not benefit from them in the end. Respecting clothing is really the way the Gemara terms it. He disrespected clothing, and therefore he wouldn't benefit from clothing. So, now there might be room for other understandings. Maybe there's other midrashim, and that's why I can't say, the other things the other thoughts that we mentioned, and maybe what Ben is saying possibly has a source. But I think the main thing, the thing that we know that it says, and it's a Gemara that mentions that kol hamavaze es habegodim, kol hamavaze begodim, whoever shows disrespect for clothing. So I think that's, that should be the main point. We did say another source of a different reason, which is a altogether different reason, and that is that the last story in the previous book of Shmuel that David had seen the angel with the sword in his hand, and he was ready to or was involved in bringing the plague against the Jewish people. So David got scared, and from that he became he got this cold that he could never warm himself. It affected him, and his blood became cold and from fear. Basically, he was not warm. So there is that interpretation as well as the interpretation of the clothing. But it's what it seems is at least the Gemara that we have is about showing disrespect for clothing. Now,
Rabbi,
yeah,
just on that point, I don't want to get too mystical, but the Arizal explains that there's an aspect of a soul even by inanimate objects. So I'm wondering if that's the way that it's able to be disrespected.
I mean, I think anything could be disrespected. You know, the question is what he did wasn't really wrong, because you know you have to evaluate what's called disrespect or respect. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's
I understand what you're saying.
I mean, like, let's say you have too much candy in the house and the kids are eating it, so you throw it out. So you're showing disrespect for the candy, but you're showing respect for your children or your children's teeth. You know what I mean? Like, everything has that. You know, there's that balance here. If you show disrespect to this, you're going to show respect to the other thing. So which one is worse? You know, is it worse to show disrespect to the candy or disrespect to the to your kid's teeth and to your kid's health? He's saving his life. So we have to come on to the fact that this is a matter of the fact that we're dealing with very holy and righteous people here that have to answer to a much higher level of rules than the simple way things are written in the Torah. You know, the simple laws, they could have gotten, they didn't do anything wrong. But on the higher level of relative to their level, you know, that's what we're dealing with. But I mean, you're right. There is a soul in every item. The Ria Kodesh mentions it. It's brought in Tanya, right? Everything has a soul, and there's a godly soul that gives its existence. And cutting off a garment is sort of, so to speak, maybe embarrassing that level, because now it's not usable as a garment. That little piece that you cut off, maybe you're ruining it from its ability from its usefulness. So, I mean, you know, it still has a godliness in it, but maybe it's some sense, you know, some element of desecration to the way it was. So, yeah, good point, David. But I mean, I think ultimately you have to come on to the other idea. Yes, Moshe.
I would say that because he cut off part of his tzitziot, that it really endangered Shaul from returning back to wherever he could go, because Hashem would have him struck dead. So that was really not just cutting a piece of cloth and material, but it put his life in danger, because if you're not wearing your tzitziot, you know, it poses a threat to your very existence. So he may have not been able to return. So that's another way of looking at it too. That was not just
right. It adds a little, thank you. Yeah, it adds a little point there. Again, where we're dealing with David, whose life is much more in danger than Shaul, who doesn't have his tzitzis on for a few minutes. You know, David's life is completely in danger, but you know, it's a good point. Definitely a good point, Moshe. Okay, so
it actually wouldn't be a problem, because if the corner's cut off, it no longer requires tzitzis.
Well, not necessarily. There are 2 points to that. One is that either he doesn't have tzitzis on, so that's one point. Now he doesn't have a garment with tzitzis on. Another point is that it could be that a 5-cornered garment needs tzitzis on 4 of the corners, and it doesn't have it. So it could be he's actually obligated, might have had to switch garments then to take off the garment that there isn't tzitzis on. But the point is that he's now without tzitzis, you know, and that's a problem. But I think
Rabbi?
Yes.
It's Susan Resnick.
Yeah,
I
hi,
don't have,
Susan.
in-
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a quick question, please. Where does it teach that inanimate objects have a soul? I never heard of that.
Check out the Tanya of
Okay.
in the beginning of the book Sha'ar HaYichud V'Ha'emuna, which is the gateway to unity
Okay.
and faith.
Okay. Thank
So
you
it's
so much, Rabbi. Thank you.
yeah, it's a second part of the Tanya. If you have the 5 volume, it's I think the 3rd volume. It's the beginning, the
Okay.
first
I'll
chapters. You'll see it there in the first.
Thank you so much. Sorry
Yes,
to disturb
Avram.
you. Thank
No,
you.
no problem. Yes, Avram.
What did David, why did he do? What did he expect to get out of this action? Was
Oh.
it respect? Was it?
So what he wanted to get out of what he
Yeah, well-
ultimately wanted to get from cutting off the corner of the garment was he wanted to show Shaul that he could have killed him and he didn't. He's not trying to kill Shaul as Shaul all along was thinking. And instead, it's like a one-way street here where Shaul wants to kill him, but he has no intention of killing Shaul. Shaul all along was paranoid that David wants to take over the kingdom and David wants to kill him. And so on here, David was right next to Shaul. He could have easily killed him. And he had his officers with him. They could have easily overpowered Shaul. And they even risked their life to just cut off a little corner of the garment to show him this and not kill him. So they had all the ability to save, David could have easily saved his life and gotten done with all of his suffering. And instead he chose the painful path, and he did. So it sounds like he went way above and beyond the letter of the law, and yet he's punished for it. So, we went through a lot of explanation trying to explain why on his level and knowing Shaul is this chosen one of Hashem and he's really a tzaddik. And even though the stories don't sound that way, but really he is, and Hashem considered him extremely righteous and special. So anyway, now we've been talking about the story of the law here that, not the law, the advice from the doctors that David HaMelech will have a solution to his feeling of coldness by simply having a woman sleep by his side, and it'll warm him, a virgin, specifically a virgin, and that will give him warmth, and that will be a solution to him being cold. And so verse 3 is they sought a beautiful girl throughout the boundary of Israel, and they found Avishag the Shunammite and brought her to the king. Now we'll see later, it's interesting, there is a woman, the Shunammite woman, a woman from Shunam, who becomes a little famous with the story with Elisha. And it turns out that this is the sister. So they're both very righteous people. And this Avishag, you have to understand the tremendous self-sacrifice of this girl, Avishag the Shunammite. And the reason why she's so special is because she's willing to give up her married life with, she probably could have found many nice young men. And instead, she's going to marry a 70-year-old man or a 69-year-old man, and not even be married to him, but simply be a medicine for him. So he is going to, now, of course, he's a tzaddik and very, the holiest of the holy, but she really is giving up her life. And what is she getting for it? She's getting, number one, she's entering into an area of question where, she's going to be secluded with a man who she's not even married to. So she's entering into spiritual danger, so to speak, because this is not exactly the norm. This is not the normal, what I would call the Beis Yaakov way of doing things. The very the ultra orthodox way of doing things, which would be to have a proper wedding and a proper married life and sneas and all those laws. And instead, she's going to be with a man who she's not even married to, and she's going to be secluded with him. And then additionally, she might not have any children. She's not going to be married to him. How is she ever going to, is she ever going to get married afterwards? She has no idea how long he's going to live. And is she going to be allowed to be married to another person if she could, is she, it's somehow considered permitted to anyone else? Now, so anyway, they're looking for this beautiful girl. Now, the question is, why did they need a Naira Yafa? Why do they need this beautiful girl? Why can't they just get a young virgin? Why does it have to be Yafa? Why does she have to be beautiful? They sought a beautiful girl throughout the boundary of Israel. And the answer is that they didn't necessarily need someone beautiful, but as a way of honoring the king, they felt it would be appropriate to have someone beautiful to be, to be the one around involved in helping out the king. Now, another point that has to be mentioned is not necessarily was all of this known to everyone in the kingdom. Like the people in the kingdom didn't necessarily know that she's going to be providing this physical warmth for the king. Instead, it looked like she is getting a position, and that's verse number 4. It says, the girl was exceedingly beautiful. She became the king's attendant, and she served him, but the king was not intimate with her. So what it's implying, at least to the public, is that maybe they didn't lie together. But we know, of course, that was the goal. But she had this position, and the term in the Hebrew, the soichenes, is, at least according to the way the understanding, or one of the understandings is, that she was given a position where it would look like she's more doing some type of she has a position in the palace. And not everyone, needed to know that she is, she's providing this healing, this medicine for David HaMelech. Now, I want to jump to the Gemara here, so we're going to share screen. And no, that's the wrong one. This is it. And we have the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, page 22a. Can all of you see this?
Yes.
That it says over here, one may not ride on the king's horse, one may not sit on his throne, one may not use his scepter, one may not see him when he is having his haircut, nor when he is naked, nor when he is in the bathhouse. As it is stated, you shall set a king over you, meaning that his fear should be upon you. Now, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yaakov says that Rabbi Yochanan...
Rabbi,
yes.
Can you make it larger?
Yeah, let me make it larger. Let's see if that helps. It's not working. Why not? Oh, let me see if this works. Is that good? Is that better? Do you see it larger now?
Much better.
Okay. So Gemara says, Rabbi Yaakov says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that Avishag the Shunamis was permitted to Solomon, but forbidden to Adoniyahu, which we'll soon see that story, who in fact wanted to marry her. She was permitted to Solomon because he's a king, and the king may use the scepter of a king. Avishag's status was similar to the king's scepter, as she had been designated to serve King David. And she was forbidden to Adoniyahu because he's an ordinary person, not a king. Now it says, the story of Avishag, what is it? It is, as it is written, now King David was old, stricken in years. His servant said to him, let there be sought a young virgin, let her lie in your bosom, and that my lord, the king, may get heat. As it is written, so they sought for a beautiful maiden. And it is written, and the maiden was very beautiful, and she became a companion to the king and ministered to him. The king did not know her, which means he didn't have relations with her. Avishag said to King David, marry me. Now, this is a part of the story that it doesn't say in the book of Kings. And it's from the Talmud. This is the Talmud, Sanhedrin. It's Talmud chapter, page 22a of Sanhedrin. So she said to the king, marry me. In other words, I don't want to be secluded. Why should I be secluded with a man that I'm not married to? So King David said to her, you are forbidden to me, as I already have 18 wives. So King David basically wanted to marry her, but he couldn't because he already had 18 wives. Now, Avishag said to him, and she gave him some type of parable, when the thief is lacking what to steal, he makes himself like a man of peace. So what she was saying was, you are old, you're 69, and you're not able maybe to have relations. So you're making an excuse that you have 18 wives already and you can't marry me because a king is not allowed to marry more than 18 wives. And so you're making up a lie, but really, you don't want to marry me because you can't have relations. And what she was really saying is, I don't care if you can't have relations. I still want to marry you so I won't be like I'm sinning to be secluded in an area with a king, even if we can't have relations, even if even if there's an issue, but at least let's do it according to Jewish law that we'll be married. And King David said to his attendants, call Bathsheba to me. And it is written, and Bathsheba went to the king, into the chamber. And now the king was very old, and Avishag the Shunammite ministered to the king. And Rabbi Yehuda says, so what is the meaning of that verse? Rabbi Yehuda says that Rav, in the name of Rav, at that time, Bathsheba wiped herself with 13 cloths, corresponding to the number of words in the verse, indicating that she engaged in intercourse with King David 13 times. And what that means is that David HaMelech wanted to answer Avishag that I'm being very honest with you. I have no issue having relations. And in fact, I'm going to call Bathsheba in. And he called Bathsheba in and he had relations with her 13 times in a row, in that moment. So so the understanding of the Gemara is that that's how David HaMelech answered Avishag, that the real reason why I'm not marrying you is because I already have 18 wives. Now the Gemara continues and says, Rabbi Shimon Bar Abba says, come and see how severe a matter of divorce is. And what the Gemara means is that David HaMelech, maybe he should have divorced one of his wives and instead married Avishag. In other words, divorce one of the 18. He'll now have 17. And now he can marry Avishag and there won't be any issue with marrying. And what do we see from the story? As they rendered it permitted for King David to be secluded with Avishag without marrying her, but they did not render it permitted for him to divorce one of his wives to enable him to marry Avishag, which shows how severe divorce is. That the rabbis felt it was better in this case, because of David's health, that they needed to come up with some solution for his health situation of where he's, shivering and cold. And they had two options. They could have said, divorce one of the wives and marry Avishag. Or the other option was to permit David to be secluded with Avishag. And that was the one they chose, that instead of divorcing one of his wives, it's better to permit the prohibition of being secluded with an unmarried woman. So they permitted that instead of encouraging him to divorce one of his 18 wives. So that shows how painful it is, divorce, to Hashem, so to speak. And the Gemara continues and it mentions about anyone who divorces his first wife, even the altar sheds tears about him. and so on and so forth, all the terrible things about divorce. The Gemara here in Sanhedrin continues with with discussing the painful consequences of divorce.